Welcome back, everyone. In this video, we are going to really deep dive into components and understanding what components are conceptually. We're going to take this concept into our application so that we can understand how to leverage this concept of components so that we can write a more scalable, maintainable, and reusable web application inside of React. So what is a component? We've already written one component, which is our app component. It's a class component, but it is a component nonetheless. And so far, let's quickly recap what we know about this component that we've written. This component right now is something that governs a piece of the UI. For us, this entire application, everything you see, so all of this UI, is all encapsulated inside of this app component. What this means is that our entire application lives inside of one component. But if you really think about the concept of it, what we've done so far in our component is that we have tied together the functionality of the UI with the actual UI itself. And that is what React does. If you remember in the early lesson that I was teaching, was that React is really just a way for us to tie together the visual representation of the UI and the functional representation of the UI. It ties them together. But that's what the code does. What about this concept of a component, though? We know that a component is meant to tie together functionality and visual representation of our user interface. But what it also aims to do is it aims to tie together reusable portions of the code together into one segment. And what I mean by this is if you look at our application, we really only have two features. We have a list of monsters, and we have a search bar that searches through those monsters. Technically speaking, these two parts are the two features that encompass our entire application. However, if you think about it deeply, this list of monsters can be a list of anything, really. The concept of a list alone is just a concept. You can have a list of monsters, you can have a list of cars, you can have a list of homes, you can have a list of anything. Similarly, a search bar is just a field input that takes some text, and then we do something with that text. In our particular application, we filter the list of monsters with that text. But you could also take that text and do something else with it. You could use it to actually filter through a completely different set of articles. You can use it to search for a specific website as Google does. But the idea is just a search bar really takes some text and then does something with the text. The reason why I'm trying to generalize these two features is because that's the idea of components. You want to try and figure out if when you're creating a component, you can genericize the functionality of that component as much as you can so that it becomes as reusable as possible. And by thinking about components that way, you're able to build your application so that you don't have to rewrite a lot of code, because that's the most important thing about our code. We want to be able to create Lego blocks. We want to be able to build these reusable bits of code that we can use in multiple places. But we want to use them in a way that makes sense, where ideally it has a single responsibility. So let's think about what that means. And we're going to learn about that a lot. That idea of a single responsibility throughout our components. It's very general and it's very abstract. And it's something that really comes to you as you build a website, and it varies from website to website. But through good practice, you'll really come to understand this. And throughout the course, we're really going to develop this concept. But if you think about it right now, let's think about that concept right now. Inside of our application component, our search bar and our list of users is completely tied together. If in our application, for some reason, we wanted to reuse this list component, we can't do it because we automatically get a search bar with it. This becomes evidently clear when we look inside of our code. Right now, our search bar is tied to our filtered monsters list through all of the code that we've written, and it all lives inside of our app component. We're not actually generalizing the feature of the search bar or the list of users. So what we need to do is we need to start generalizing them. And by doing that, we're also going to understand more about components and how these components re-render. So let's get started doing that. Let's first generalize a component that makes the most sense for us immediately and the easiest way, which is this list of monsters. Now, before we actually start figuring out from a coding perspective how we're going to do that, there's one very quick thing I want to highlight, which is the fact that what we need to now understand is our folder structure. So inside of most React projects, you do separate the files that you have into different folders by their responsibility. And one of the most common patterns you'll see across React projects in terms of their folder structure is they will create a folder that holds all of their components. And usually that is the components folder. Depending on the size of your website, these folder structures may evolve and adapt according to what your senior architects who lead the projects are going to figure out. But there's a pretty general pattern that we're going to follow for all of our projects in this course. And they're going to give you a good idea of how to make that decision and how these decisions do get made when it comes to figuring out the folder structure. So for this one, the most common one is we know we want to start building out components. And we want those components to encapsulate functionality. So what we want to do is we want to make a folder that's going to hold all of our components. And if we really think about what it is that we are creating right now, our very first component, looking at the actual feature that we just spoke about, this is going to be a list of cards. So that's really what this component should be. It's a list. But in this particular case, the final output of this is a list of cards. So that's what I'm going to make a new folder that's going to hold this component to be. It's a card list. So again, that is going to be how we're going to make the next folder as well, which is to encapsulate our second feature, as I mentioned, which is the search box. So here, inside of this components folder, we are going to create and add into it all of our components, and each component is going to live in its separate own folder. So we're going to have a components folder, and then we have a card list folder, which holds our card list component. We have a search box component, which is going to live inside of the search box folder. And then any future new components we make, we're going to make a new folder for that general component inside of this components folder. So that's the idea around components and breaking them up, and then how they live inside of our application. And in the next video, let's actually start moving our card list into its own component.